One of the largest severe weather outbreaks of the entire year is going to be coming to the United States over the next few days, and we are going to be seeing significant severe weather beginning Monday, running all the way through Wednesday from the Great Plains back into the Midwest, and as well as the Ohio Valley, and eventually into the Mississippi Valley, where we will have significant damaging winds, large to very large hail, and as well as several tornadoes, which strong tornadoes will also be a possibility. So in today's weather forecast, I'm going to give you an idea of where we're going to be seeing this severe weather outbreak, who is going to be seeing severe storms, and why you need to be prepared ahead of time for these severe storms. So we're going to begin with what's happening right now in the United States today, and that will lead to basically what we're going to be talking about with the significant severe weather event. It'll begin on Monday, and even some significant severe weather today, by the way, in parts of Texas, which we'll also talk about. But this is what we have right now on the map across the United States. We don't really have much happening, at least as of right now. We are going to have a surge of moisture, though, that's going to really bring a more significant, robust threat of severe weather later today to parts of West Texas. We have a lot of cloud cover on the East Coast, but overall, not really a whole lot of rain out of that. And also back in the Midwest, there's a lot of cloud cover. But the one thing that we need to watch for here over the next few days is this over on the West Coast, because this is going to be our large storm that is going to bring the threat for some robust supercells as we go into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, with significant severe weather being possible and the potential for severe weather outbreaks being possible as that trough eventually moves to the east over the Rocky Mountains. It'll set up shop across the Great Plains as we go into Monday. So this is going to be our storm to watch for, and that's what's going to bring that threat for very significant severe weather, with all modes of severe weather being possible. And we'll be talking about that more in detail here in just a moment. But I do want to begin with what the threat is today across the United States, because we do have an enhanced risk for severe weather back over in West Texas, where there will be a chance for strong tornadoes today, which is obviously concerning. But with that said, I feel like this is going to be pretty similar to what we've seen over the last few days, where we have been tracking a couple of strong and large tornadoes, which I think that's obviously going to be a possibility here. But I think it's going to be quite similar to what we saw yesterday, the day before, and even a few days before that, where we did end up having a few strong and large tornadoes. Either way, obviously make sure that you're staying vigilant and weather aware, because if you did watch any of our streams from the last few days, we were tracking large and strong tornadoes that were really, pretty crazy looking on, on radar, and as well as even in person. So really crazy stuff there. The marginal threat goes all the way back up into the Midwest, which I don't expect much in the Midwest or even back into Missouri or Arkansas. I think overall the threat of severe weather is really going to be minuscule across this area. So obviously stay weather aware, but the tornado risk is pretty much near zero, and only the threat will be wind and hail. And then very large hail is also a possibility. We could have some giant hailstones near 4.5 inches in diameter today across parts of West Texas. There's your large hail threat, primarily near Midland, Texas, and then that significant tornado threat is really going to be in quite a small area there near Midland. So once again, stay vigilant, stay weather aware, and have multiple ways to receive alerts. Storms will fire up this afternoon right around 3 to 4 o'clock. We're going to get a ton of supercells out there, which is really the reason why there's a concern. We're going to have a few more of these discrete cells that are a bit more organized later today. That's the reason why there's a 10% hatched risk, and any of those storms will have a more significant tornado risk. Once we get closer to 5 to 6 o'clock, those storms move to the east. By around 7 to 8, most of these storms become clustered together, with very large hail still being a possibility, but eventually by midnight, most of these storms are no longer going to be significant or robust. So overall, that threat of severe weather dies down, and by Sunday, we will have a low threat for severe weather here in the southern plains, but that should primarily come out of the storms that we're talking about tomorrow morning. Speaking of tomorrow morning's threat, look at this. We have another marginal threat of severe weather for parts of Texas and as well as back through Arkansas, and a small one even back up in Ohio. Overall, I'm not concerned about tomorrow, and I don't think we'll have to be live for tomorrow, but if needed, we will go live. There's a low tornado risk across parts of South Texas, but that's mostly what's going to come out of the end of what we're talking about tonight in terms of the severe weather threat. So that will not really be anything different from what we're seeing tonight into tomorrow morning. That will just be that line or cluster of storms that will end up developing. Now, once we go into Monday, that is when things become relatively significant, and we very easily will have a severe weather outbreak potential on Monday with the current environment that is forecasted. Look at this. We have a massive enhanced risk of severe weather that includes parts of Nebraska, Kansas, and even Oklahoma. The Storm Prediction Center has already mentioned, and we're only on day 3 right now for this outlook, but they've already mentioned that an upgrade to this risk does appear likely, or at least possible. So we'll have to watch this very closely, because all modes of severe weather will be possible. That includes damaging winds, large to very large hail, and tornadoes, and we could have multiple different rounds of storms that day. We might have one area back further up here to the north that begins more in the afternoon. We could have another round down here that begins later into the evening, so it's going to get a little bit hairy here across the Great Plains, but just know that we'll probably be live on Monday, so make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified when we do go live. The marginal threat also not super large, but it'll include areas like Texas, Missouri, and back into South Dakota where a lower threat of severe weather will exist. We'll talk about the timing on this in just a moment, but notice this area that we're looking at here. We do have a hatched area, which means significant severe weather is a possibility, which very large hail and strong tornadoes are currently the main concerns. You think it might end there? It's not. We're going to have another large slight risk of severe weather in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. Will once again return to the severe weather action where there is another slight risk for severe weather. So make sure you're staying very vigilant and weather aware if you are across the Midwest or the Ohio Valley, and even back into parts of Northeast Texas, also included in that large slight risk where damaging winds, large hail, and more tornadoes will be a possibility. By Wednesday, you think it's done? It's not. We're going to have another large slight risk of severe weather as we go into the Ohio Valley and as well as Texas. This is, again, a very large area, and this is going to be coming out of pretty much the same storm that's going to bring the first two risks, maybe a little bit different, but this is where we're watching for more damaging winds, more large hail, and more tornadoes. You think it's done? Well, at least for now, we don't have another risk on Thursday, but that might change. We could get another risk on Thursday across parts of the East Coast, so just keep that in mind. So overall, this pattern is going to be very interesting. We are going to be talking about this low pressure system that's going to come off the west coast of the United States, and we are going to get a negatively tilted trough, which means we're going to have a huge pull of moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. And also notice the wind profiles here. Even in the upper atmosphere, we are going to have a very strong southerly and southwesterly flow across the Great Plains as we go into Monday night. And as long as the timing is all good, we're going to probably have a pretty significant severe weather event, unfortunately, on Monday across the central and southern plains. And then once we go into Tuesday, that trough moves to the east, and that'll pose another threat for significant severe weather. But on the backside of this activity, we actually have multiple different areas of low pressure that'll basically be here in the upper atmosphere. And what we're basically going to have to watch for as we go into Wednesday is a redevelopment of a low pressure system. And this will be the first one that's going to bring the severe weather on Tuesday, but this one will bring the severe weather on Wednesday. So that's going to end up bringing some more significant severe weather to parts, again, of the southern and central plains, and eventually back through the Ohio Valley and perhaps the Midwest. And then once we go into Thursday and Friday, this eventually moves to the east, and I do think we are finally going to get an extended break of severe weather threats as we go into next week. So this will be around May 11th, and after that, I do think the severe weather threat starts to die down across most of the United States, but again, unfortunately, we have to get through this threat of severe weather. Now let's go through the future radar and give you an idea of the timing with all this severe weather, and we'll begin with today. Again, notice those storms back down in Texas. We kind of already talked about that earlier, but that is what's going to be going on there today into tomorrow morning. Once we go into Sunday, we'll have high pressure in the Midwest, so things will stay dry there for at least a little bit. Maybe some showers and storms Monday morning across parts of the Ohio Valley and the Dixie Alley, but I'm not expecting anything super significant. Once we go into Monday afternoon, storms will fire up across Nebraska, Kansas, and South Dakota, where significant severe weather will be possible, and then a more robust threat of severe weather will develop later into Monday evening across parts of western Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma, where strong tornadoes and significant damaging winds and as well as very large hail will be a possibility. By Tuesday, another robust threat of severe weather will develop across the Midwest, with probably a couple of rounds of storms being possible. And then once we go into late Tuesday evening into Wednesday morning, those storms will move into the Ohio Valley, where there will be a threat for mainly damaging winds and hail, but a couple more tornadoes will also be possible. And then once we go into Wednesday, notice that redevelopment of a low pressure system. This will bring more significant severe weather to the southern plains and back into even areas like the Midwest. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Wednesday was another big day of severe weather, like what Monday will be, and potentially even Tuesday. And then once we eventually go into Thursday, that moves to the east, where more severe weather is possible on the East Coast and maybe closer to the Gulf Coast, but that remains uncertain at this point. And then once we go into Friday, there's another probably low threat for severe weather across the immediate East Coast, but that remains uncertain at this time. And look at this, by next weekend, things look at least somewhat quieter across the United States. I don't see any major storms in the forecast, at least for next weekend. Let's hope it stays that way, because I think all of us need a break from this severe weather. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.